Pleasure of interviewing Pablita Velarde.
Okay.
Pablita, tell me when you were born and where you were born.
I was born in Santa Clara Pueblo, and my grandma delivered me.
Okay. And what year was that?
1918.
Okay. So, how old were you when you signed on with the WPA?
I was about 19.
And could you tell me about the years that you worked with the WPA project?
1939 through 1945.
And exactly what did you do and where did you do it?
I worked at Bandelier National Monument under the Park Service supervision. And I worked off and on for the period of 5 years. They hired me when they found money, and then took me home when they ran out. But through the 5 years, I worked out there painting. I did about 80 paintings, I think.
And where did you stay?
I stayed with the custodian's family in their garage.
And did you eat your meals with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And were there any other artists at Bandelier?
No, not when I was there. They had, I think, commissioned Mr. Helmut. I think that's his name. Because his paintings were hanging out at Bandelier.
Did you have any contact with Helmut Naumer?
No. No, I never met the gentleman.
So just tell me some stories about what it was like, because I know the CCC group was there building the buildings, and so what was it like being probably one of a few females back then painting and being in this large camp?
Well, I had very little contact with the CC boys because they were camped, and I was under the Rangers' protection all the time. And I worked inside the museum, what is now the museum. And so I was indoors most of the time.
Tell us the story again. You were telling me about all the jobs that you did before you got to painting.
Oh, well, I did mediocre jobs like housework and nurse's aide in 2 hospitals and switchboard operating. But I never lasted in any of them. The maid jobs I did around Española and Santa Fe, and then the hospital jobs I did at Dulce and Santa Fe, and then I went on this lecture tour with the Setons to take care of their little adopted girl, and we were gone about 5 or 6 months, touring the eastern cities, and it was very educational for me because I hadn't even left the area of New Mexico, and I think the farthest I ever was Santa Fe, and so it was a nice experience for me. But I got tired of doing the nursemaiding and traveling. That after we came back to New Mexico, I told them I was going to quit. And then after they found another maid, I went home. And then I was home about 1 month, and then Park Service came and hired me to do the artwork at Bandelier. So I was there off and on from 1939 through 1945.
Who did you interact with in terms of other artists of that period? Did you have any interaction with any other artists of that period?
I don't know if Olive Rush was in the WPA or not, but I had contact with Olive Rush because she hired us to do the measles murals, and that's how I happened to get involved with Miss Rush. And I had known of her and knew her from a distance when she used to visit the Indian school when I was still in school then. So it was nice to at least work under her for a while, doing the Maisel mural.
Tell us about how you got the job doing the Maisel mural and what it was like working on that mural.
Well, I guess Mr. Maisel probably wanted murals put on his wall at the shop downtown. And so he wanted Indian things on it. And so I don't know who recommended the artists that were there, but Pop Chalet was there. And I don't know who. I think Joe Herrera did one of them. I'm not sure. And I don't even remember who the other ones were. It was so long ago that my memory just don't work that good anymore.
Can you tell us anything about Pop Chalet?
Well, she was real fleshy. Very striking woman and loud. And I guess she was a good artist as far as painting goes. She did beautiful horses.
I'd like to hear about your experiences at the Indian school, what it was like and how it developed you into a painter.
Well, when I first went to Santa Fe's Indian school, it was so military. They marched us in every direction, to school, to eat, and to even back to the buildings where we belong. And they just marched us all the time, and it wasn't too much fun being a soldier in a dress. and I don't know, I played basketball when I was at the Indian school, so that was an outlet for me, playing basketball. And then when Dorothy opened her studio, I went in for that, and that's how I got started. You might say amateurly, but I stuck with it. I stuck with it because I couldn't do anything else in my life.
When you were at Bandelier, or when they would come and get you, then did they tell you what to paint, or could you paint whatever you wanted?
Well, Dale King was my boss, up there. He was a park ranger, and he wanted the museum to have kind of a historical layout, like how the Pueblos were governed and how their medical needs were met, and how each Pueblo might dress, and so I did a lot of the research on the government, the system of government, and I painted little figures of different stages and different orders, that they had in their system of government. And then for the clothing wise, I fixed their hair and the way they dress. The Clearys people always had the red boots, and the people up north, they wore mostly the white boots and the calico dresses, the manta that they made themselves. The only time that they would more or less show the Pueblo true belief would be when they wore the black manta, and that's only a ceremonial dress. So every other time, they just make their own calico dresses, their mantas, like my dolls. Mm-hmm. And of course, they didn't look as pretty as my dolls. Some of them didn't anyway. But in my early early days, I could still remember all the women wore the Indian style dress. Hardly any of them bought the store-bought ones because none of us had money. And that I was telling the young lady here a while ago, says I was the only one making any money during the Depression. And everybody hated me because I had money and they didn't have any.
Well, exactly how much money did you make? And were you paid by the day or the hour or the month?
I was paid by the day, but not every day. I was paid maybe every 2 weeks, but my hourly salary was $5. So I was able to build my own home at Santa Clara because I used to more or less kind of whenever I went to Santa Clara, I stayed with my dad, and he had a third wife with a young bunch of kids, and I didn't like it. So when I got money, well, then I built my own home.
And do you still maintain that residence?
No, I sold that when I got divorced here. We needed money, so I sold that first house that I built. But I bought another one later on, one of the government had houses. So I own that now.
And how often do you go back to the Pueblo?
Just when there's something going on or when they ask me to come for somebody's celebration of either wedding or Holy Communion or something like that, when it's a family thing.
So did you have brothers and sisters?
I had three sisters, 2 older than myself and 1 younger. The only 2 that are left now are me and my younger sister. And we're both up I'm in my 80s, she's in her 70s. So.
And none of them worked for the WPA project?
No,
You were the lucky one.
I was the lucky one. Well, I think that they hired Lagoria, my older sister, to make some pottery. And I know that back in the old days, I don't know if Park Service still have the film or not, but they made a tape of her making pottery.
We can certainly check on that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if they still have it or not, but I know they made a film on it.
Well, do you think that you, in your paintings, your 80-plus paintings, that you represented most of the pueblos in New Mexico?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. Because some of them look like the Vaqueros from the southern part of our Rio Grande area. And I did some Taos, with their blankets around their hips and skinny braids, stuff like that. And the Santa Clara men, some of them, I just had blue jeans on their dress up and maybe a blue shirt or some color. And the women all had mantas, the calico mantas.
How did that project at Bandelier affect your career in painting? What became your career in painting?
Well, I was so inspired by the time I made all the research on it and did all the paintings, and I didn't want to leave my paintings with Bandelier, but I had to because they belonged to them. They paid me to do it. So when I quit that job, I had already gotten married in the meantime and had 2 little brats, and so I was stuck for about 5 years just taking care of the family. And then after I got them in school, I had time again to get back to my artwork. And of course that chased my husband away from me too because he didn't like the messes. And so after my divorce, everything went back to its normal stage. I can do what I want, and I did it. So for about 70 years, maybe 80 years, where I'm still at it. Of course, now I kind of take breaks and substitute some dolls, Pueblo dolls or Navajo dolls. And like I was saying, my dolls are getting so popular now, I might have to push my painting on the back burner Where at the beginning I was making, in the 50s, I started making dolls, and they weren't so popular, but they didn't make me as much money, and then my paintings got real popular. So I put the dolls on the back burner and kept my paintings rolling, and now I don't rush with anything. I just take my time. If I want to do dolls, I do dolls, and if I want to paint, I paint.
That's wonderful. Did you ever meet, after the WPA period, after the 30s, did you ever get to meet any of the artists that worked during that time, and do you have any interesting stories about them?
I had a friend in Santa Fe. What was his name? He's Carl something. Holloman?
Hollenkramer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about Hollenkramer.
Well, he was always, I used to, sit under the porch to sell my paintings, and he would always join me. He'd sit there with me, and visit and promote my work. he was fun. But he always came over to my table and he sat with me, there under the porch on Saturdays or during the fiestas. We were still involved with the fiestas in those days. But he was lots of fun and very friendly man. And there was another person there that was an artist. I don't know if he was in the WPA or not. His name was Dutton.
He was Herbert Dutton.
Yeah, and he was always a nice person too.
Well, can you tell us anything about him?
Not too much. I didn't know him as much as I knew Carl. I was so young in those days that the men didn't really interest me that much.
So, in essence, by working at Bandelier, you supported your family probably.
Just about. Mm-hmm.
And so you would go away for like 6 weeks, and then they would bring you back to the Pueblo, and then when they got another pot of money,
Mm-hmm.
then they'd come and find you
Mm-hmm.
and bring you back.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have had a long-standing relationship with the ranger.
Oh yeah, I think I went through about 3 custodians while I was there. Then they sometimes get transferred out of one area and sent to another. So I was there with about 3 custodians, and one of the little girl that I used to stay with, Chester. What's his name? Gosh, my memory for names is so awful. Anyway, his little girl was about 4 or 5 years old when I was staying in their garage, and she came to see me last year, and I didn't recognize her because she was a grown woman and married, and she came over here because she said I just couldn't pass through Albuquerque without coming by and seeing you. I said, but I don't remember you. And she said, sure you remember me. Remember you used to sleep in my garage, not in my bed, in a garage out at Bandelier, and then it dawned on me who she was,
Well, with your $5 a day, did they provide you meals, or did you have to pay for meals?
No, I stayed with the custodian. I paid them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You did have to pay rent?
No rent.
Okay. So you would take home a nice little savings,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would spend it.
Well, the last, when I went back to work after my children were just little types, I took them with me to Bandelier on the last 2 or 3 trips. And they put us up in the cowboy's cabin, and we stayed there. And of course, that way we fed ourselves, We make a list every time the ranger's going to town, to Santa Fe. We'd make a list and give him enough money so that he could bring home some groceries for us. And that's the way we managed. Sometimes we were snowbound, and the only way that any one of us could get any groceries was to make a list and give the ranger money so he could buy our stuff.
Did you have fun doing this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, did you all interact and have fun while you were at the Rangers?
Oh, yeah. We did a lot of nice hiking, and the kids always thought they ought to fish, on the stream, which they never caught anything, but they pretended like it was something for them to do. And then we explored the caves,
And the
and
petroglyphs?
there was another ranger's wife that was a good card player, and we played cards.
What kind of cards did you play?
We played the gin rummy and blackjack and double solitaire, all kinds of little games which I've forgotten how to play now.
So your memories of that period of time are happy memories.
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed it up there at Bandelier.
Have you been back recently?
Oh, I was up there about, when did we go up there? About 2 years ago, I guess.
That's when they brought all your paintings out, correct? And they had a reception.
Mhm.
Can you tell us something about the reception and seeing all your paintings together?
Well, I didn't know that it was to honor me, and that the way that the ranger called me out said was that they were trying to get the WPA artists to come up to Bandelier, and so they asked me if I'd come up, and I said sure. So I went up there, and then after I got there, I found out it was to honor me, That's when they gave me that wooden flag, and I was surprised, and they had some dignitaries showed up from Washington and Santa Fe, and so it was kind of a nice honor.
What did you think, though, walking in and seeing all of your paintings in one room? I mean, it had to have brought back a rush of memories and stories.
It was so many memories, and then kind of emotional at the same time, because it was like all my kids were back home.
I was gonna say, can you share some of the memories you had?
Well, I know Dale was a good boss, Mr. King, and he wasn't pushy, like some bosses. He just more or less talked to me and put things in my head what he would like to see get done, and so I just kind of made up my mind what he was talking about. So then I go from there and did my own thing in my own way. And the custodian, Mr. I'm going to call him Chester because I don't know if that's his last name or his first name. And they were just terrific people, easy to get along with. And the missus was a very good cook. She always had good meals, better than mine. In those days, I didn't do much cooking anyway.
Well, I'm sure it was a very positive experience for your children.
They enjoyed it. They had a donkey pat up there. Her name was Pascualita. We call her Pasky. And then at the cowboys' cabin where they had pet squirrels that used to come up to the window and they'd feed them. And the deer would come into the barn and eat the hay. So we had all kinds of animals, that visited us at the cowboys' cabin.
I'm sure that watching their mother work, your daughter to be a painter and your son is a sculptor.
Yeah, I guess so.
And did they play around in your studio while you were painting?
The rangers more or less took care of them until I finally found me a babysitter. And but the rangers were always, when they weren't on tour, one or another one would at least more or less keep an eye on them. Because one time they had a rattlesnake mounted, and the kids went into the museum and got some long sticks and poked all the skin off the mounted. And after that, each ranger was responsible to keep the kids out of the museum so they won't be peeling any more rattlesnakes.
Well, the rangers probably, some of them were probably about your age, weren't they?
Yeah, they were all the young college type, the young men that were working their way through college, get a part-time job in the summertime.
And did they do the ranger talks back then where you went and sat around a campfire?
No, No, they just took the tourists on tours, and explained the way the old Indians lived up there and what they might have been, using for.
And did you interact with the tourists?
Not very much. I was more or less in a closed area where I was painting, because if I try to paint and talk at the same time, I'd make messes.
Well, the piece that we have in our traveling photo exhibit is called the Pueblo Tourist. Do you remember it?
I don't remember.
It's a tourist with a camera, and there's a car.
Oh, yeah.
Can you kind of tell us a little background and history of that?
Well, back in the early days, they didn't allow people, in the village during a certain ceremony. And so this picture that I have painted with that car, with the white people in the car and the old man standing there halting them, while he was telling them that they weren't allowed to come into the Pueblo on that certain day. And that's what Dale wanted you to express in that picture, was that there are certain times when people weren't welcome into the village.
Well, you expressed it very well. Most of your pieces are either very symbolic or they have a definite message. When you start a piece, do you already know what it's going to say in the end?
Just about. I think about it a long time before I start a painting. It's in my head how I want it to look when I'm through with it. And so I just, sometimes I maybe even dream about it. If I keep thinking for a long time what I want to do, That's what happened to me when I was doing the story paintings. I try to remember all the things that used to flash in my head, and maybe some of it stayed and some of it didn't. But I used to make mental pictures of what kind of illustration I wanted to do. That's what I did.
And do you still do the story paintings?
Not lately, no.
Why did you stop?
I don't know. It's just one of those things that dry out on you, I guess. Like my paintings dry out on me, and sometimes my dolls don't interest me enough to get back to work. There are periods when you just kind of dry out.
But yet, back in when you were at Bandelier, you were very prolific.
I was young and hungry.
So did you ever go hungry during the Depression, those years?
No, my dad was a farmer, and he raised just about every kind of vegetable that was edible. And he raised a whole lot of beans, and we traded the beans for other staples from the store. And the Indians never gave us any money for trade. If they bring us a bucket of corn or something if they want a bucket of milk. Because we had cows that we didn't pasteurize it, but we let them use it, the way it was.
And one thing that I'm not clear on is where did your supplies come from? You had to have brushes and canvases and easels.
Dale took me shopping into Santa Fe, and we bought all the materials in Santa Fe. And then every time I run out of something, well, I tell him what to get, and he'd go get it.
So you could have as many colors as you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and as many different brushes.
Mm-hmm.
And the government paid for your
Mhm.
supplies and paid you a salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was pretty good.
And did they pay you in cash or did they give you
No,
a check?
they gave me checks.
And then where did you go to cash them?
Any place in Española. They all knew who I was, I was Herman's daughter, so if the checks didn't work out good, well, they got after my poor old dad. I never had a bad check given to me, so that way I got lucky.
Let's see. Kathy can do this ruler like that.
I know she can.
Can you think of anything else you need to know?
WPA was, something a closing kind of question.
In closing, Pablita, can you tell us about how the WPA affected your life?
Well, it made me feel, I think, kind of important that I was chosen by the government, to put some kind of artwork in a brand new museum up at Bandelier. And after that job, while my paintings started to sell, before that I could hardly sell anything, except little tiny 50-cent paintings or dollar paintings. But after that, I was able to sell a little bit better size paintings, maybe like $50. Maybe the highest I might have gone would have been $100. And but in the early days, why people weren't educated enough to appreciate Indian art as art. They more or less wanted were landscapes and flower pictures, things like that. And Indian paintings just didn't go into their taste. So it was a hard start back in the 30s to try to make a living with the art. But that's why I did so many mediocre jobs, because I had to kind of survive. And then getting spoiled by Park Service too, that kind of put a little bit more self-esteem in my personality, so that I could push myself to doing things that were probably unheard of by the Indian women. And so I got to be very pushy.
So you got to be very pushy, and I would say that probably Bandelier is your lasting legacy.
Mm-hmm.
How did your parents and your peers at Santa Clara, what did they think about you going off on this adventure?
They probably thought I was crazy. Being a woman, they just expect in those early days that a woman should just be a housewife, raise babies, cook the meals and clean the house and stuff like that. And they never thought of a rebel like me, painting pictures that only men were supposed to be doing. And I broke that taboo. Then I built my own house. That broke another taboo. Women don't build houses. Men do that. Well, I said, I'm not a man, but I'm going to build me a house. So I built my house with my Park Service earnings.
So you wouldn't change anything.
No,
I mean, those years are very important and prominent.
they were a build up of what I am today.
The self-starter you are today, because
Uh-huh.
you're definitely a self-starter.
Uh-huh.
So you would say thank you, WPA.
Oh yes, I thank them all the time.
Thanks, Pablita.
Yeah, thank you.